what it reminds me. There's so many things in my mind about this whole Planet X thing. I just can't remember them all at once. But anyway, that reminds me that there's a friend of mine in Italy named Luca Scantamburlo. And you could look him up too. You should be taking notes. You can write down Scantamburlo. Luca Scantamburlo. Anyway, he's a researcher. He was in contact with a man by the name of, in Italy, a ufologist, UFO researcher who had his own magazine. His name was Cristoforo Barbato, B-A-R-B-A-T-O, Cristoforo Barbato, both in around Naples, Italy. Anyway, Luca told me, and others, he was on other shows, he talked about what's called the Jesuit footage, and I think they took it off. I can't find it anymore. He told a story. Cristoforo Barbato was approached by a man who said, I work for the Vatican. I'm a secret agent for the Servizio Informazioni del Vaticano, which stands for Vatican Information Services. No one is supposed to know that this organization even exists. But we all know the Vatican. They're very likely to have their own CIA. In fact, I don't want to just offend any Catholics, but they may have their own assassination team, too. I don't know. This man says, I work for the Servizio Informazioni del Vaticano, the Vatican Information Services, and Barbato was very suspicious. He said, show me your information, your credentials. And he showed him some credentials, and he says, I've got these footage for you, Mr. Barbato. This was taken by the Vatican. The Vatican is very much into Planet X. This gives you another major clue that this thing is real and that their power elite are very concerned about it. He says that what they did was this. This is what this agent, who was not supposed to talk, told Barbato. He said, what they do, they have the connection, the Vatican has a connection with the United States government. They launched a hypersonic aircraft from Edwards Air Force Base, I believe it was. Edwards Air Force Base in California. Secret launch, of course. Up into space. High enough to launch this camera. Very small, I guess it was a small probe with a camera on it. And this probe is traveling way, way out into deep space. Keeps on going, just like the Pioneer 10 kept on going, or the Voyager. And it got far enough out where it was able to take films, pictures, digital footage, I guess, of this object. And it was posted. I saw pictures of it. I never did download it. And it looked like a big revolving red ball with haze around it. And it has moons trailing behind it, too. Anyway, that's called the Jesuit footage because the Jesuits secretly captured films. This image was transmitted by, telegraphy. Transmitted by transmitters, digitally, just like they transmit information back from NASA probes and satellites. It was transmitted back to a secret base in Alaska, which was actually an abandoned oil refinery, which was used as a receiving station for the signals from this film or a video footage space probe taking pictures of Planet X. And it came back, and that's how this guy from the Vatican got it, because it was received by the U.S. secret base in Alaska. And that's my story there from Cristoforo Barbato. And now that you can no longer find it, what does that tell you? That the information was probably true.
Right, of course.
So that's basically what we have to look forward to. This thing sweeps the Earth. It's surrounded with this red iron oxide haze. Why? Why would it be surrounded with iron oxide? Because in deep space you do have larger quantities of the iron oxide. And remember, this thing is like a gravitational vacuum cleaner. It picks up many objects of varying sizes in its orbit, and its orbital diameter is many millions of miles. So that when it comes in, and I'll tell you real quickly, this thing comes in below that glass, visualize a glass circular tabletop, okay? Just the tabletop alone, that's suspended in space with stars all around it. Draw a mental picture in your mind. And on top of this glass tabletop called the ecliptic is, in the center is a big bright ball which is the sun. And then further out is the other planets, Mercury, Venus. As you're going outward from the sun, it would be Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And so these objects, these planets are all revolving around the sun. And below this glass circular tabletop in space, which we call the ecliptic, is the planet X coming in. Visualize it as a smaller little baby sun, much smaller than the big sun at the center of the tabletop. But this object is coming in from below. How do we know that? Because the late Dr. Robert S. Harrington, whom many of us believe was murdered because he was about to reveal the fact that he had sighted this object, taken photos of it from this U.S. Naval Observatory facility down in Black Birch, New Zealand. You have to get down close to the South Pole in order to see it because it's coming in the southern skies below the ecliptic, and that's why they had to go to the Black Birch, New Zealand observatory to take photographs of it. And he was coming back. He says, when those photographs are developed, I am going to reveal to the public what we saw. And he used the blink comparison method, which takes blinking photos at various nights to see that one object amidst the billions of stars that is actually moving. The stars appear to be stationary. So if you do the blink comparison flashing method, you can see one object moving out of billions of them. And this one object was Planet X, and he determined, I believe, that the motion of this object was toward our solar system. It would naturally be coming in toward our solar system because our sun is a great gravitational fisherman. It will suck in, pull in anything, even objects far out, such as this object, Planet X, that happen to be captured by our sun. And that's what they stated in the New York Times article of 1983, before they were suppressed by the National Security Agency, that all the astronomers in that New York Times January 30th, 1983 article state that this object is now, this was 1983, is now about 5 billion miles out, we believe, and that seems like a far distance. This is their words. Seems like a great distance. However, it is still within the gravitational pull of our sun, meaning that common sense tells you that if it was within the gravitational pull ever so slightly of our sun in 1983, it must have been continuously pulled in gradually closer and closer. And the front page article reads, possibly as large as Jupiter, mystery heavenly body discovered. Written by Thomas O'Toole, Washington Post staff writer. Quote, a heavenly body, possibly as large as the giant planet Jupiter and possibly so close to Earth that it would be part of this solar system, has been found in the direction of the constellation Orion by an orbiting telescope aboard the U.S. infrared astronomical satellite. So mysterious. Now, here's where the lies come in. They know it's Planet X, but they're going to lie to you and tell you, well, we really don't know what it is.
Exactly, yeah.
Second paragraph. So mysterious is the object that astronomers do not know if it is a planet, a giant comet, a nearby protostar that never got hot enough to become a star. Incidentally, that's what it truly is. It is a protostar that never got hot enough to become a star. Or if it's a distant galaxy, so here's where the baloney comes in, the lies, the deception. Or is it a distant galaxy so young that it is still in the process of forming its first stars, or a galaxy, this is really nonsense, or a galaxy so shrouded in dust that none of the light cast by its stars ever gets through. Well, they had to throw in one piece of truth mixed in with all the other lies, that it indeed is a protostar, that is a baby star. Continuing on, quote, all I can tell you is that we don't know what it is. Dr. Jerry Neugebauer, infrared astronomical satellite chief scientist for California's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and director of the Palomar Observatory for the California Institute of Technology, said in an interview, "The most fascinating explanation of this mysterious body is, which is so cold it casts no light and has never been seen by optical telescopes on Earth or in space, is that it is a giant gaseous planet as large as Jupiter and as close to Earth as 50 billion miles." Now, get this. They go on to say, while that may seem like a great distance in earthbound terms, it is a stone's throw in cosmological terms, so close, in fact, that it would be the nearest heavenly body to Earth beyond our outermost planet, Pluto. Yeah, but that's all we can tell is that we can say we can theorize it, but we don't know. Planet X did come in into the solar system, and there's always been an intruder every time it made its periodic intrusion. I suspect it came in at different points in our solar system because the ancients tell us in Sitchin's book, 12 Planet, ancient astronomers from Nineveh and Babylon said that it comes in around the orbit of Jupiter. Now, right now, we don't believe it's coming in around the orbit of Jupiter because what happens is it loops around. It always does loop around. It has to loop around the sun. So if you can see that if it came in around, looped around the sun as close as Jupiter many, many centuries ago, well, it doesn't come in. It's not coming close to Jupiter right now. It's going way out there. It must be way out and making its big U-turn, which is a lazy, slow U-turn around beyond the outer planets, probably beyond Uranus. We have seen signs of the disturbances on planet Saturn and planet Jupiter as this object came in below the ecliptic, causing it to get some of its companion bodies, gravitationally captured bodies, were recaptured by Jupiter, and we saw comet explosions or comet crashes into Jupiter in 2009 and 2010, I believe. But since then, it's come in below, and now it's overshot the sun from the south, and now it's coming back around way out there and making its return. That, incidentally, because it has overshot the sun, that's why all the disturbances on the Earth and the sun sort of quieted down around the year 2009, 2010, because since then, between then and 2016, it was making its big U-turn. I'm theorizing now, based on what we see. When it comes back, it's coming back like a slingshot, a big U-turn, and when it comes back, we're going to see increasing natural disasters, which the Inuit Indians of Alaska, those people live in a terrain where there's not much vegetation. They go do whaling to survive, and those people have to, in order to survive, they have to know where the sun is rising and setting throughout the year. And they're one of the first ones to report about 6-7 years ago that the sun is not rising and setting in the correct places during various points of the year as it should be. So it's absolutely true that it's not, the sun is not, that because the Earth itself is now rotating vertically. It's basically wobbling, I believe. Now, we can tell, this is the ancients, incidentally. You know what Stonehenge was for? I'm not sure if scientists even understand, even today, with all their study of Stonehenge, why it was created, what its purpose was. But I believe that because the stones are so massive, they cannot be moved. You have a fixed, basically a line of an eyesight, a fixed line of vision between the Earth and the sun for any given day of the year. And for particular days of the year, like solstice, the spring solstice, and autumn solstice, I should say winter and summer solstices, you have the sun should be repeatedly, year after year, in the same place as it lines up and shines its rays through the opening of Stonehenge. And those people who, in ancient times, who created Stonehenge wanted a fixed, immovable monument like Stonehenge where they could see for a particular, any given day of the year, where the sun was coming through, because they knew that when this object, this massive disturbing body comes in, they may not have known that the disturbing body was the actual cause of the disasters, but they knew they had to find out when the earth was beginning to wobble. So when the earth wobbles, the sun will no longer shine through the eyesight, more or less, to a particular vantage point through Stonehenge as that it normally does. And you will then, civilization at that time had an indication as a consequence of that irregularity that there's going to be some kind of disaster occurring, that Earth is going into a wobble. And I think we're having that right now. In fact, the ancients actually had other ways of looking at light shining through a split. And I'm trying to remember where, but there are plenty places on the earth where the ancients had these, what they call petroglyphs, where they would watch for the light shining through an opening in rocks that would cast a light or a shadow on a particular point. And this would be a way to index the position of the sun at any given day of the year. And if the earth is going into a wobble, you're going to have problems. In fact, with the ancient Colburn Bible, there was written by survivors of the last disaster in Egypt. The Israelites told the truth. Moses accurately described the great disasters, but we have amplifying information from the Egyptians who lived in Egypt at that time, who survived and wrote passages of the Colburn Bible and the Ipuwer Papyrus, Ipuwer. You can look that up. That's at the Museum of Leiden, Leyden, in the Netherlands. That Ipuwer Papyrus describes great disasters that occurred on earth at the time of the Israelites' exodus from Egypt. God created these disasters. And they talk about in the Colburn, I can paraphrase some of the things. They say the stars appeared to be swirling in space. Well, the stars were not moving. It was Earth that was going into a wobble, getting ready for a pole shift. It's like a top. When a top is spinning and it begins to slow down, it no longer is erect, remains erect in its spin. But because it's slowing down, it begins to wobble. It loses its balance. And eventually, if this top goes slowly enough, it will topple over. So that's what they wrote about in the Colburn Bible, how the stars began to whirl around in space.
Just fascinating stuff there, John. I have read parts of the Colburn Bible. I've not read the whole thing. I have read the entire book of Enoch, and it's a shorter read, but it is also just a really, really, really good take. And another viewpoint, which, in my opinion, the Book of Enoch should have been included in the Bible, but they decided not to include it. But if you have not read the Book of Enoch, take the time, and as well as the Colburn Bible. At this point, I'd like to say thank you so very, very, very much to John Dinardo for being here.
Thanks so much.
And John, will have you back on the show.
Yeah, we can do this again. My email is contact me. Maybe we can get together and have people commune with God, because God is our only hope against all these horrors that are coming.
Right, of course. I want to get to the point where we're doing either a podcast or a radio show. We're looking at doing either one of those, either a radio show or a podcast, or we'll do a live show and then maybe save it out there as a podcast for folks to listen to later. So I'd love to get you back on and have folks be able to call in and ask questions and things like that. So thank you so much for coming on. And folks, thank you guys for listening. This has been just a great interview and a great, just a wonderful amount of information that we've been able to learn from John. And I hope you guys have enjoyed it. We are looking forward to doing more things like this in the future. Hopefully, we'll do some live things in the future where we can get you guys involved, take questions online or on the phone, so live, so you guys can interact with some of the guests and things like that. And we're definitely looking at doing some of that stuff this year. So again, thank you guys so much for listening. This has been Planet Nibiru, and we will see you soon.
Just like the Pioneer 10 kept on going, or the Voyager. And it got far enough out where it was able to take films, pictures, digital footage, I guess, of this object. And it was posted. I saw pictures of it. I never did download it. And it looked like a big revolving red ball with haze around it. And it has moons trailing behind it, too. But anyway, that's called the Jesuit footage because the Jesuits secretly captured films. This image was transmitted by, telegraphy, transmitted by transmitters, digitally, just like tells you this gives you another major clue that this thing is real and that their power elite are very concerned about it. He says that what they did was this. This is what this agent, who was not supposed to talk, told Barbato. He said, what they do, they have the connection, the Vatican has a connection with the United States government. They launched a hypersonic aircraft from Edwards Air Force Base, I believe it was. Edwards Air Force Base in California. Secret launch, of course. Up into space. High enough to launch this camera. Very small, I guess it was a small probe with a camera on it. And this probe is traveling way, way out into deep space. Keeps on going. It reminds me, there's so many things in my mind about this whole Planet X thing, I just can't remember them all at once. But anyway, that reminds me that there's a friend of mine in Italy named Luca Scantamburlo. And you could look him up too. You should be taking notes. You can write down Scantamburlo. Luca Scantamburlo. Anyway, he's a researcher. He was in contact with a man by the name of, in Italy, a ufologist, UFO researcher who had his own magazine. His name was Cristoforo Barbato, Barbato, Cristoforo Barbato, both in around Naples, Italy. Anyway, Luca told me, and others, he was on other shows, he talked about what's called the Jesuit footage. And I think they took it off. I can't find it anymore. He told the story. Cristoforo Barbato was approached by a man who said, I work for the Vatican. I'm a secret agent for the Servizio Informazioni del Vaticano, which stands for Vatican Information Services. No one is supposed to know that this organization even exists. But we all know the Vatican. They're very likely to have their own CIA. In fact, I don't want to just offend any Catholics, but they may have their own assassination team, too. I don't know. This man says, I work for the Servizio Informazioni del Vaticano. the Vatican Information Services, and Barbato was very suspicious. He said, "Show me your information, your credentials," and he showed him some credentials, and he says, "I've got these footage for you, Mr. Barbato." This was taken by the Vatican. The Vatican is very much into Planet X. This is